On this episode of the SurgeonMasters podcast, our guest is Lou Zirkle, an orthopedic trauma surgeon and founder of the Sign Network. Dr. Zirkle founded Sign in order to bring healing to the injured poor in developing countries. Today, he gives mentorship to Sign surgeons at each hospital, reviews patient cases, and inspires new, innovative design ideas. Lou, welcome to the SurgeonMasters podcast.
Thank you.
Can you tell us in your own words a little bit more about your background?
Well, I was born in Massachusetts in the western part, and then I moved to North Carolina. My dad was an engineer, and it was still segregated at the time. And Dad got me a job hacking lumber, and I was the only white fellow on the team to do it. And you had to really work together with them. And we became great friends, all of us. The people in town didn't like it. They didn't like Yankees anyway. But then with me being so jovial with the black men, they didn't like that. But I still, though I worked at this company 3 or 4 summers, as I moved up to being a carpenter, I still ate and preferred to eat with these people. And I think that's where I learned that we all are equal. And I think that's important. It's not just equality, it's equity. That was probably the beginning of it.
Yeah, so that's a key experience in your youth and starting the work. And I heard a little bit about a carpenter. How does then carpenter go out to school and become an orthopedic surgeon?
Well, I wanted to stay a carpenter, but my mother said I should go to college. I went to the closest college to us at the time, which was Davidson College. That opened up a lot of other windows because there were different kind of class of people that were there, prep school people, and we really became good friends also.
When did you start thinking about converting your carpentry into a medical area?
Well, there was sometime during college, but there were the 2 students across the hall and the 2 in our room. We had 2 to a room back then, all hung out, and they were all going into medicine. So I just took the same classes they did. All of this is pure luck, Jeff.
It sounds like a great story. Tell me a little bit more about then. So you started going those classes and then evolved into what next?
Well, it evolved into interviews in medical school. Again, chose the closest medical school, which was Duke. For some reason, I'm very lucky that they allowed me to come in. And so I became a medical student at Duke. Duke has back then even, I don't know how it is now, but it has a very equitable situation because we had to learn the hometowns and what they did and of all the patients. So we really had to know our patients as people.
So that sounds like that gave you an incredible exposure to that kind of interaction with people and patients. Let me jump forward a little bit, and then maybe it will touch back into the past a little bit as well. But this then evolved into a person that goes through medical school, decides to go into orthopedic surgery. What was that like?
I have to say, Jeff, I've been very lucky throughout my life. I was at Duke and I was walking down the hall and this man yells out, "Hey, boy." And I looked around and I saw that he was talking to me. He was the chief of orthopedics, Dr. Baker. He said, "I'm operating on your brother tomorrow." My brother played football at Duke. "Would you like to come and watch?" So I said, "Yeah, but I've never been in the operating room before." And he said, "That's okay." He said, "Show up here at 7:30 in the faculty locker room," which was total embarrassment to me. He says, "Put your clothes in here." And it was the dean's locker, who was a neurosurgeon. And I had these orange shoes, which my mother said were very fashionable, but I think she liked them because of the sale price. I was just fearful he would come in and want to use his locker. But fortunately, he didn't. And then Dr. Baker really was a big part of my career. And then I took all my electives with orthopedics. And then he said, what are you going to do? What kind of residency? I said, I'd like to be an orthopedic surgeon. He said, fine, boy. He says, I'll make you a resident. So I missed my junior assistant. In other words, I missed the 1 year of general surgery that everybody had to have back then, which was a really good thing for me, because when I was drafted in the Army, I went in as an orthopedic surgeon rather than a general medical officer. And it was really an important thing for me.
Sounds like it. So at what point do you start leading down a path that sparks an idea related to your sort of your personal mission, or what then evolved into the early parts of the creation of the Sign Network?
Well, I think it's something that gradually grows on you or in you. When I was in Vietnam, I was a commanding officer of a K team, and which meant I was assigned to a hospital, but I was also the liaison between the helicopter detachment, the medevacs, and these into the battle. We went into the battle zones, picked up the wounded, and took them to our hospital. And we picked up civilians that were wounded too, and Vietnamese soldiers. And the deal was that we send them, of course, we would take care of the GI, the American soldiers in our hospital. And then Vietnamese soldiers went to Saigon, and the Vietnamese civilians we were instructed to send to another facility. And I went over and visited that facility and was not adequate. So it's a long story, but a lot of the story of my life is luck. A lot of lucky things happened. I treated Joe Fix, the commander at Dak To, which it was an important battle. And every day, Generals Westmoreland and Abrams would come to visit him. So I had to stand there like an idiot, not doing anything. So I thought, well, maybe I could ask them if I could treat the Vietnamese in our hospital. So they had a lot of meetings, and I was given a whole Quonset hut to treat the Vietnamese civilians, which was really good. And I give highest tribute to the nurses who had to do this on their spare time, to anesthesia, who spent extra time with the Vietnamese, and to the whole evac chain, because they sent me implants that I could use. And because GIs, American soldiers, you couldn't operate on them in Vietnam. You could debride their wounds, but that was it. But I had to permanently fix these others, Vietnamese, that were wounded, and we really grew to be good friends.
So it sounds like that experience was incredibly fulfilling.
Yes, it was.
And that was one of your early interactions in providing orthopedic care to an international population.
Yes.
And then what grew from there?
I came home, and then I went back to Vietnam because I felt I wanted to help them. I was immediately arrested, interrogated for 3 days and nights. And it was my fault, though. I used my Army duffel bag for a suitcase, and it had Captain on it. After that, we all worked together. They put me to work operating, and I just operated day and night because most of the Vietnamese surgeons were trained in the Ho Chi Minh tunnels. There was a Ho Chi Minh Trail that had whole hospitals there. One of my very good friends was trained there, Dr. Quang. We all learned Vietnamese, but they are very inventive. And so when I brought the sign equipment over there, they just jumped on it and offered suggestions and helped improve it. We really became good friends. And I visited Vietnam every year for about 15 years after that.
What interval is kind of happening between your first experience over there and then going back to briefly get arrested to you then designing the sign nail?
Well, I saw the need, and I also had gone to Indonesia, and we saw this. We were making rounds. I had taught in Jakarta, but also we were out in another outlying area, and there was this man lying in bed, and they said, well, they told me about him. He had been there for 3 years with a fractured femur. And I said, well, why? We gave lectures about this. We talked about it. And he said he can't afford an implant. And I realized with a sinking feeling that I had wasted a lot of time, because if they don't have implants, it doesn't do any good to teach them about it. So I went home and we started working on implants. And they had to be very special implants because they had power surges and we couldn't use any electrical machines such as C-arm or cautery and things like that.
It sounds like, in my understanding of this story, is it kept growing and growing and growing.
Yeah, it's out of control. A lot of people have helped, Jeff, along the way. I mean, Randy Huebner was the founder of Acumed, helped us by providing our first machines, because we started talking about all this stuff and we worked in garages and we got beef bone from the butcher bone. And we had all these ideas going. And then as the ideas came to fruition, I realized we had to manufacture it. So Randy came up and he gave us some old machines from Acumed, and that was our start of manufacturing.
Yeah. I'm going to challenge you with a pretty intriguing question and premise to it, that I appreciate your perspective, that you feel very lucky, that I don't dispute at all how important it was to have other people be part of this eventually increasingly large project. I've read and I've heard that there's some element of luck, and that some luck that people assign is being with the right people, like that by you wanting to be with the other workers in your youth, and you're wanting to and get to know them, and you're wanting to help or be with the Vietnamese in that project, that's putting you there in a helpful way that sort of creates the right environment for luck to occur. And what I would hope is that some of our listeners not just maybe appreciate and learn from your modesty, but also to learn that maybe it isn't all just about luck, because then that maybe dooms people that feel that they have bad luck, right? But maybe there's something in what you were trying to do and what you enjoyed that was important to the process as well. And therefore, what do you think was the drive for you that made some of these things at least have the opportunity to happen?
I don't know. I didn't start out this way, but I saw situations that I could be helpful. I thought I needed to do that for some reason. So I just did it. We were in Vietnam, and the first time that we had a conference between North and South Vietnamese, and they really were enemies. So we had this conference and started talking, and then Vietnamese fellows started singing. And then Don Nagel, who was with us, he was chief at Stanford, sang a sailor's ditty, and pretty soon the whole room was singing. It was just amazing. And then we went out and got on our motorcycles and rode off. But there's so many good people in the world, Jeff.
Yeah. I want to congratulate you on the success and the award that the Orthopedic Trauma Association gave you this past fall. I think it has come from a tremendous amount of hard work and dedication from your part and all the others that chose to collaborate with you, or you chose to collaborate with them. How do you maintain such a high level of energy to be able to help so many people and accomplish what you have?
I don't know. I think I was just born that way. I think it's good in a way to be hyperactive. And I think that has to do part of it.
And do you get energy from opportunities to rest and refresh? Do you feel you get the energy from all those things happening around you, such as the inspiration of the singing and other probably hundreds of stories that inspired you like that?
I get from the stories. I don't get much relief from rest.
I noticed also that when you have inspired other surgeons and brought people in the network, it sounds like the inspiration of these patient stories is a key factor as well.
Yes, it is.
Tell me a little bit about that. Like, how did you come about to recognizing that, or just what's really important in that message in your mind?
I think that we just slid into it. It wasn't one of these overnight things. It was just that things happened and we watched them. And if it was successful, then we proceeded along those same lines. It wasn't any big turning on of electric light.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm certainly seeing that in a lot of my endeavors and a lot of things that I feel that I'm doing to provide value for patients and other surgeons. It's little small successes that you go, okay, I think this is working better than what we were doing before.
Yeah, you're looking with fresh eyes, like Marcel Proust talks about.
Yeah. In retrospect, any thoughts on a few other, maybe you didn't see it on the way there, but now looking back, were there any other lessons that stood out to you?
Well, there's been a lot of little lessons. Our staff here at Sign, we employ 45 people to make the implants and the instruments. They have been wonderful, and they work really hard. We don't go by education. We go by their attitude, and I think that's an important way to hire people. And we just have the best time there because we're all interested in working on the same wavelength. And then overseas, I give a lot of credit to the surgeons overseas. They are really good considering the situations they have to deal with and their lack of things like seance in the operating room and radiology. They don't have that, a lot of them. So they have to do it by proprioception, by feel. So we've made the whole sign system so it doesn't need a C-arm.
And does it tap into that skill set, or it helps almost deal with a lot of different adversities and limitations?
Yeah, it's looking at the situation and making a solution. I think the idea of stimulating your proprioception is very important. The ability to know, to feel with your hands or to see with your hands. I think you really learn a lot that way.
So there's definitely lots of things that I would love to learn from you. I didn't check into this recently, but I don't know if you've written any bigger things or any other people have written other surgeons about the project and some of the successes.
We have a book we wrote, We Walk the World. It talks about the progress of sign. It kind of leaves off about 4 years ago.
Yeah, but that's excellent because that, we always like with our podcast to give people another source when they're interested in more information. So that sounds fantastic. Another maybe tough question, but what would you tell your younger self if you could talk to, say, the 35-year-old Lou? Anything that would have made a path smoother, more enjoyable? And maybe you wouldn't say much of anything. I'm not sure, but
I really like the idea of looking at things with new eyes. So much of the time in orthopedics, you just do what they've done before, or what you've done before. And the idea of looking at the whole process and with new eyes is very important because you can develop instruments which go along with that, and you can really make discoveries because you're not hampered by what's the established way to do things.
And that new eyes is both sometimes yourself trying to do that with reflection or introspection. And then sounds like it also involves talking to other people and getting other perspectives.
Yes, that's important, especially getting the perspective of the surgeons overseas. We have daily communication because all our cases are reported on the database. We have a big database. And they write in and ask questions, and I give my opinion, and we have a very lively discussions ongoing.
And so it sounds like a really big key message is looking at things with new eyes. And if I understand you correctly, many of those points of progress and growth and expansion and doing things better and having more impact, like whatever progressed in the story, often it was a matter of looking at something with new eyes.
Yes.
That's a fantastic overarching theme of a point that I think many surgeons could benefit from.
Thank you.
Luke, can you tell me a little bit more the distinction between equality and equity?
Okay, if you have a high wall, the wall, let's say, is 5 feet high, and a tall guy, 6 feet, can look over. And then a short guy comes up, he's 4 feet, he can't see. So equality, you give him a stool of 1 foot. So the big guy still can see, but the little guy needs more than the 1 foot. So a lot of people in the world need more training, more understanding than the other people, and that's equity. So we have to give people according to their needs, give patients according to their needs. Some patients are working manual labor, a lot of them do. And you treat those the same, but yet you recognize that they're going to be putting more stress on their legs and joints than someone who doesn't work that way.
And so the goal is equity.
Yes.
Realizing that there is not equality.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, I think that was fantastic. I appreciate you joining us and sharing small parts of your story and how it's impacted both yourself and others. And I really enjoyed this conversation.
I did too, Jeff. Thank you.